Hello everyone, and welcome back to the podcast, Do You Like Korean Food? I'm your host, Erin. The weather has been sweltering and I've been trying to spend a lot of time indoor. So I watched many films, read books, and visited museums. And I thought, maybe I can share some of that with you. So today, we're going somewhere a little different. It isn't about a specific food or menu. It's about a very special exhibition about Korean culinary culture. If you're interested in Korean food and culture, this is an exhibition you shouldn't miss. First, let me introduce the place itself. The National Museum of Korea, or 국립중앙박물관. It's Korea's largest national museum, and it ranks third in the world in terms of visitor numbers after the Louvre and Vatican museums. It's located in Yongsan, Seoul, and its collections cover a huge range of Korean history and culture from prehistoric times to the modern era. And here's something visitors may like. The permanent exhibition galleries are free, so you can spend an entire day without paying an admission fee. Also, the view from the National Museum is really good. You can see the open sky and Namsan Seoul Tower in the distance, which is quite rare in Seoul, because the city is packed with skyscrapers. So when you get there, you'll see a lot of Koreans taking pictures there. And there are also places worth visiting nearby. First, since Yongsan is close to Itaewon, which is one of the most foreigner-friendly neighborhoods in Seoul, so you can explore the area after the exhibition or have a good meal there. Also, there is Yongsan Family Park, Yongsan 가족공원. It was used as a Japanese military facility during the colonial period and later became part of the US military base. It was then converted into a civilian park in 1988 and opened in 1992. There's a 2-kilometer walking path with lakes and trees, so you can have a nice stroll or go for a picnic. Anyway, coming back to our topic. Most of the exhibitions are free, but there are also special exhibitions, and those usually have separate admission fees. And that's where today's topic comes in. The exhibition Our Table, or 우리들의 밥상 in Korean, opened on July 1st and runs until October 25th this year. The exhibition has 2 sections. First is called Our Table Through Life, and the second section is called Our Table Shaped by Nature. The first section begins with the most basic ingredient of a Korean table, rice. As you may know, rice is the staple of Korean cuisine, and in Korean, the word 밥 literally refers to cooked rice, but it can also mean a meal. That's why the phrase 밥 먹었어, which literally means did you eat rice, can actually be used as a casual way of asking have you eaten. And that phrase has traditionally been used as a way of showing care, almost like asking, how are you? Or have you been doing well? And that tells you just how important food is in Korean culture. You can also see utensils and tables and how Koreans display rice, soup, and several side dishes for their meal. And at the second section, you can see how Korean foods are tied into nature, and how people use natural ingredients and preserve them for long periods of time. Almost 70 or maybe even more of Korea is mountain. So people had to gather wild herbs and grow whatever they could in the mountains rather than relying heavily on meat. That's why Korean food is more into vegetables than meat dishes. And because the winter was harsh and people couldn't grow many crops during that season, they have to preserve vegetables. This made food preservation especially important, and fermentation became an important part of Korean cuisine. So you can see the history of fermentation in Korean food in this section. And since I've already been there, I would like to share some things that are particularly interesting for me. The first was the documentation of royal table. It's called 원행을묘 정리의궤 in Korean, meaning a detailed record of a royal journey in which King Jungjo visited his father's tomb with his mother. This king's name is Jungjo, one of the wise kings in Joseon dynasty, but also a king whose childhood was marked by a tragic family history. And by the way, Joseon was Korea's longest ruling dynasty, lasting for more than 500 years from 1392 to 1910. It is the dynasty that ruled Korea immediately before the Japanese colonial period. So, in a nutshell, his father wasn't a king. His grandfather was a king. The King Jungjo's father was Crown Prince Sado, the son of a King Jungjo. But King Jungjo had a deeply troubled relationship with his son. So, he ordered Crown Prince Sado to be locked inside a rice chest, where he eventually died. Jungjo was only a child at the time, and he witnessed his father's death while pleading with his grandfather to spare him. And because the Crown Prince Sado did not die as a king or in a normal royal burial process, his tomb was also not properly managed. So Jungjo moved his father's tomb after he became a king to a newly developed city of Hwaseong, now a city in Gyeonggi province, and visited there often with his mother. Although it seems relatively close by modern perspective, it took several days to get there in ancient times. So the entire royal family had to have several meals. In this record, 원행을묘 정리의궤 documented those journeys and meals. This document has a record of days about what the king ate, what the king's mother ate for 3 meals and snacks per day. Since the king cared for his people so much, the record says that he ordered not to make his meal too heavy and simpler than even his mother to make things less luxurious and easier for the royal staff preparing his meals. And the second thing, which is interesting for me, was 도문대작. 도문대작 is another book written by Hyun, who is a prominent political thinker and writer during Joseon dynasty. And to briefly introducing his most famous novel, 홍길동전, A Tale of 홍길동, is a story about a young man named Hong Gil-dong. It's often described as a Korean version of Robin Hood. This character is a brilliant but a socially marginalized young man because of his birth and social status. So he turns against corrupt authorities and help ordinary people, and eventually leaves the corrupt society behind and builds his own ideal kingdom. So from this story, you can get a sense of how radical his ideas were. So he was accused of high treason and was exiled. But he was also a gourmet at the same time, so he even asked to be sent to a place where it would be easier to find good food, and wrote this book in exile, reminiscing about regional delicacies he remembered from different parts of Korea, while he was allowed to eat only rice with hardly any side dishes. In the book, he mentions herb porridge from Gangneung, jujubes from Boeon, whitebait from the Han River, radishes from Naju, and abalone from Jeju Island. So for me, it was interesting to see Koreans love good food, even writing a book about it while eating only rough rice. So now, if I convinced you to visit, here's what you need to know. The exhibition runs until October 25th, 2026 at Special Exhibition Gallery 2 of the National Museum of Korea. Admission is 5,000 won for adults, which is approximately $3.5. and 3,000 won, which is $2 for children and teenagers. The permanent galleries of the museum are free, but this special exhibition requires a separate ticket. The exhibition is open from 9:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. And Wednesdays and Saturdays, it stays open much later until 9 p.m. And one thing to remember, the exhibition is closed on September 7th for the museum's regular closure, and on September 25th, which is Chuseok, one of Korea's two biggest traditional holidays. And if you're planning to go there, I of course recommend checking the museum's official website before you visit because opening hours and admission arrangements can change. And here's another thing. Don't just visit this special exhibition and leave. There is also the famous room of quiet contemplation where you can see two beautiful pensive Bodhisattva sculptures. Outside the building, there's also a large garden and beautiful pond, so you can easily spend a full day here. And so today we took a closer look at an exhibition about Korean food culture. So if you enjoyed this episode, I really appreciate it if you could follow the podcast and leave a rating. It'll let more people discover the stories behind Korean food and culture. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode. 안녕!